You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. This is Making Tracks. Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
It's not true. That's impossible.
Hello and welcome to episode 173 of Making Tracks, brought to you by those fine folk over at fantracks.com. My name's Mark, I am one of your hosts, and of course joining me this week is a man who the only way you can really get him to work is to give him a big old blow. It's Mr. Mark Newbold.
Yeah, it is. It's true. It gets the dust out. How are you, Mark?
Very well. Well, we're now over the hill, aren't we,
yeah.
in the year? So we're on the steep descent towards Christmas, believe it or not. So that means, a lot of the TV series and stuff that I'm working on will be wrapping up, and Christmas specials will be starting. So yeah, it's getting to kind of like a really busy period. But other than that, I'm good. And of course, loving Ahsoka. How about you? How's things?
Things are good. Life is busy. Like you say, Ahsoka's on, which is really, really good news. I like it when we're in the sort of the midst of a new series, because there's loads going on. There's loads to talk about and people are excited and there's stuff happening. It's all really good.
Have you brought anything for your collection this week?
The last thing I can think off the top of my head that I bought, I got a Mando Season 3 crew T-shirt and an R2-Katie patch and coin, or coins, I should say. So they did a refresh for Katie, the original R2-Katie astromech, and she needed a bit of TLC. So as one of the sort of people that buys the patches from the club, they did a fundraiser. So they had a certain amount they wanted to raise, and the best way to do it, of course, was patches and coins. Paid into that, got these two gorgeous coins. One is the same as the patch, a triangular patch and coin that goes with it, with the R2-Katie logo and the builder's logo, the repair logo. And then the other one was the classic R2-Katie coin with the pink astromech, but the inside was sort of opaque, so you could kind of almost see through it. Really nice. So that's already upstairs, sort of on a shelf on this little display stand. So pleased with those. I like you know me, I like the little fiddly farty things. How about you?
Luke Skywalker gallery statue from, I think it was from a Disney store. It's basically made by Gentle Giant, and it's kind of depicting his entrance into the season 2 of Mandalorian. That's kind of why I brought it, because I was like, that's really cool. That's a really kind of like specific time point for Luke Skywalker merch. There isn't much out really, so I thought that's quite cool. Thinking when it came, it would be a typical mini bust or slightly bigger to like maybe like a sideshow kind of like maquette type size, but it's quite big actually, surprisingly big, and for the price actually it's really good value. So if you haven't, I would say go and check that out. And the other thing I got, which is you talk about fiddly farty things, I got this from my brother, which is our new theme tune for the podcast. I don't know, typical brother.
Yeah.
Even though we're born on the same day, like the day before my birthday, I was like, oh, what do you want for your birthday? So I'm like, right, well, this is what you can get from Amazon.
Yes.
And he brought that, because he thought it was amusing anyway, a little kind of like custom Etsy type Star Wars music box trinket. It's quite nice. It's got etched pictures on the side from various different things, including the Bohemian Rhapsody Sith T-shirt design, with Vader and Kylo and that. So that's on one side, and it's got other stuff, which obviously is very fitting for a music box. So yes, I've been kind of like twisting that now and again, which has been quite amusing. All good. So, news.
Let's go back pretty much a week to the BFI IMAX on the Southbank in London, where...
There you go.
Exactly that.
That's your flashback.
It's perfect. You guys and us guys and Fantha Tracks and the Rebel Legion and loads of other people all congregated, queued, and saw the first 2 episodes of Ahsoka as a chance for us all to get together, which we don't get that often these days because they don't do big screen premieres because they ain't making Star Wars films at the moment. What did you make of the day? We had a blast. We've got some cracking photographs from it. How was it for you?
Yeah, good fun. Good fun. I mean, these things are always a little bit rushed as well, aren't they? They say our doors are going to open at 6:15, and then they've got to kind of rush people through, and, there's always photo ops, and the way the BFI IMAX is, there's like a linear path that you'd have to go. So it was very straightforward to get your photo and stuff, but it felt a little bit rushed and that. And so really, and because obviously we were all queuing up, we saw people in the queue who were in front of us, or as we joined the queue. And then obviously, as other people were joining the queue, they were walking past us and talking for a couple of minutes. But that was about it. So it was a weird kind of slightly weird day. It was good fun, and obviously very appreciative of the fact that Lucasfilm and Disney even invited us. But yeah, it's it's always slightly weird. And also there's that, you could just feel it in the air. There's always a slight hint of apprehension whenever you go into anything new Star Wars. There's lots of people who are excited, and then there's the fans who maybe have felt like they've had their fingers burnt with anticipation before, are a little bit more kind of guarded. And so it's always a mixture of emotions. But I think on the whole, when everybody came out, I think it was purely positive.
I agree. I think you're right. The queuing is always a nightmare. They always make you wait and then rush you in, and it's a mad rush. There was a lovely feature wall with the Ahsoka logo, so loads of folks got pictures there, and then there was opportunities upstairs, little video clips and things you could do. We've waited so long for Ahsoka, and we know what it means to not only Lucasfilm, but the wider story, and specifically to Dave Filoni, who's somebody I think we're all kind of rooting for, because he feels like he's the guy that's steering the ship in the story sense, that we wanted to go in and enjoy it. I would be fairly confident in saying most of us did enjoy it. Water in cans. What's water in cans, Mark? Why put water in cans? What? I don't get it.
See, now that is a very much it's a media thing, because like for example at Sky, we actually have to paint out plastic bottles in our productions. It's a little bit more eco-friendly, but the popcorn and the small bag of popcorn and the can of water seems to be like the quintessential screening supplies that you tend to get for, I think, at least the last 3 or 4 screenings I've been to for Star Wars anyway. For Andor, the popcorn was really like a really random kind of flavour, which I was like...
sweet and salted, I think, wasn't it?
Well, the one at Ahsoka was, which was nice. Yeah. But the stuff at Andor, I can remember kind of going, what the hell is this? It was like really, really random. It was so random, I can't even remember it. But, all in all, I think it was a fun night. And for the fan groups, sometimes we're so focused on obviously getting to the event, doing the event, making sure that we put on a good, for lack of a better term, show for the public and stuff. And then the very nature, people kind of pack up and go home, and you don't sometimes get the opportunity to hang out and spend time with each other. So it's always nice to do that. And I think it's even more nice now that really the community's grown, and there's other clubs and also Fan for Tracks and Star Wars sessions that people are a lot more into kind of what we do. I think it just makes the community just feel even bigger and a lot less kind of like, oh, that's a Star Wars media lot, and that's the Star Wars costumes, and we're all just Star Wars fans.
It was a really awesome day. It's always great to get together. Doesn't happen often enough. Hopefully we'll be doing it again for, what's next? Skeleton Crew?
Skeleton Crew.
Wow.
Yeah. That's going to be interesting, because I was talking to this on the weekend. We, funnily enough, had a bit of a Rebel Legion barbecue. And one of the things I was saying is like, there was a list, wasn't there, of things that you'd really want to see kind of come to live action. And I think Ahsoka, barring probably like Solo 2, is probably the one thing that they've made that I think most people have really wanted. I know we should still be getting Lando at some point. However, it's like, it feels like Ahsoka is a big thing that we were all kind of really looking forward to. And now we've got 2 unknowns again, which is what we kind of had with The Mandalorian. And you think, go back to before Mando season 1 came out, and we're all like, oh, it sounds cool, but we don't really know what we're getting. After Ahsoka, we've then got Skeleton Crew and we've got Acolyte, and both of those are pretty unknown. So it's quite interesting, and I think it's quite exhilarating to not necessarily know what it is you're really getting.
Well, that's a really good point. That kind of leads us into our next story. Deborah Chow has been... seamless. Deborah Chow has been talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi. The Emmys are coming up. Kenobi, along with Mando and Andor and Light and Magic, have been nominated for various awards. ILM have been pushing like crazy, letting people see their work out there, and other departments as well. The point being, Deborah was talking about the end of filming on season 1 of Kenobi, which was intended to be a one-off special event, no season 2. And as soon as they finish filming, Ewan leans in and says, that was awesome. I've got ideas for season 2, and starts throwing ideas to her. So whilst there is no official indication that there will be a season 2, the lead actor, who it seemed forever and a day wasn't that interested, but as it turns out really, really was, is keen as mustard to do more. You know, Lucasfilm was working on Solo before they started working on Force Awakens.
Yeah.
You've had Solo, you've had the sequel, 7, 8 and 9 that we've been talking about since... Wow, we've been talking about 7, 8 and 9 since 1983 when Jedi came out, let alone when Revenge of the Sith came out. So that's a long, bubbling, gestating thing that fans wanted and got. And whether they loved it or didn't, there it is. We had Rogue One, which we never expected, but was phenomenal. And all the other stuff that we've had since then. So you're correct. I can't really think off the top of my head of anything else that we would have really shouted for that we haven't at least had an indication that it's coming. A season 2 of Obi-Wan, what would you do? Where would you take it? How different would you make it if you had the opportunity to sort of pitch an idea for that?
Oh, that's the thing, isn't it? Part of me thinks that what really made it magic was the chemistry between Obi-Wan and Leia. You know, Vivian Lara Blair was such a fantastic young Leia. And obviously it would be great to touch base with Leia again, but I don't necessarily know if you could kind of go back to that same kind of well in the same way as you did in season 1. However, I mean, I think now that Obi-Wan's slightly more aware of what's going on, he's faced Vader and he's survived, it would be great just to see maybe Obi-Wan get utilised kind of as more of like a sabotage agent and kind of going out and derailing the Death Star construction. He clearly doesn't have the capability to take down the whole thing. However, you know, if he can delay it and just be a thorn in the Emperor's side and Darth Vader's side, that would be quite fun. There's definitely a latent relationship between Owen and Beru that I think we could expand a bit more, maybe just life in Tatooine. It would be quite interesting just to maybe have Obi-Wan spend a little bit more time with the young Luke, especially put in a way whereby Luke is pushing against his potential without realising it. You know, how much does Obi-Wan want to say but can't say? There's a whole Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon thing. You know, we got that at the very end of season 1, which let's call it season 1 of Obi-Wan. He's still got to really learn to be able to pass on into the nether regions of the Force and kind of keep some kind of aspect of his being. And maybe you could even kind of like explore that a little bit more, maybe kind of go a little bit more metaphysical and explore the very fabric and nature of the Force. So there's loads of different ways you could do it. I mean, I guess it all depends upon what they want to do and when they want to set it. And again, how far from the end of what we've already had do they set it, I think would define greatly what is actually happening in and around Obi-Wan and the planet.
With Ben, you've still got 10 years to play with, and I think they should, as a company, treat those 10 years almost as real time, not because of Ewan, because you can age or de-age Ewan a little bit. And by that, I mean makeup-wise, not CGI-wise, but makeup-wise, because of the other actors that are around it. You wouldn't want to recast Leia. You would want to use Vivian as long as you can, I would imagine, because she was so good and so charming. But I think with Ben, the great thing about A New Hope is that a lot of the words and phrases in it are fairly open enough for it.
Open to interpretation.
Absolutely. And there's editing moments in there. I mentioned this in the Ahsoka review on the site this week about how they've shrunk the galaxy. And so for some reason, they decided to involve another galaxy. That's because they've made the Star Wars galaxy so small, because apparently you can fly from top to bottom in like 2 hours. And there was never the need to do that. But with Ben as a character, we don't know how often him and Bail speak. We don't know how much Ben and Qui-Gon commune. There's a reason you would think, beyond age, that Ben is so much weaker by the time you get to A New Hope than he is at Obi-Wan, because it's only a 10-year gap. Okay, he's going from his 50s to his 60s, but it's significant. He's just holding Vader back long enough for Luke to escape, and Leia at A New Hope. You realise now more than ever. But in Kenobi, when he gets his mojo back by that 6th episode, he hands Anakin his ass. So there's a reason, I think, why that decline happens. I think there's options to talk about there. And also, I wouldn't want to make him a fulcrum or anything like that. Not that involved.
No.
But almost in terms of what he does for the sort of the nascent rebellion and what Bail would ask him to do above and beyond what he already did for Leia, would be spoiling tactics like that. There's skills that he can utilize. He has got his mojo back, but by the same token, he would need to be very careful about not being too much of a blip on the radar for the dark side to pick up. So there's cautious things he needs to do there. And also in relation to Luke as well. Two thoughts, the two parallels I can think about that is, if you've ever seen To Kill a Mockingbird, Boo Radley, the guy that lives in the house at the end of the street that all the kids are scared of, that kind of character, because he is crazy old Ben, that's how Luke kind of thinks of Ben Kenobi. That persona is kind of the prevailing one that the kids seem to have on Tatooine of Ben as this sort of crazy old wizard in the desert.
You kind of almost want that reputation to be built up a bit more.
Yeah. I'd say Ben, in relation to Luke, is a bit more like Marty watching the events of Back to the Future 1 in Back to the Future 2. He's there, but you don't see him.
Yeah.
And Ben can be just making sure certain rotten things don't happen to him. Oh, Luke's gone off wandering again. The Tuskens are, that sort of thing. He can just deflect the problems a little bit. So I definitely think there's scope to do more with season 2 of Obi-Wan, especially if Ewan wants to do it.
Hey, it's Alyssa Wong, writer of Dr. Aphra, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
Paul Naylor and Jonathan Hipkiss sat down with Eric Walker. We had a chat with Eric on stage at LFCC in a longer form conversation. This is a briefer chat, so this is John and Paul talking to Eric Walker from Caravan of Courage and the Battle for Endor at London Film and Comic Con.
With Eric Walker, and is this your first time in the UK for a while?
I have. It's been a long while.
Yeah.
I came here just at a very small one-day convention back in 2002.
Right.
So 21 years ago.
Yeah. I think you picked up on that earlier, didn't you? Yeah. So has much changed?
A lot's changed.
Yeah.
A lot of traffic.
Yeah.
21 years later.
Yeah.
I guess now everybody's complaining about the you can only go 20 miles an hour or something like that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. The restrictions driving around London now is shocking. Yeah. It's,
Have you found renewed interest in your work in Star Wars again since the kind of Disney era has taken off?
Absolutely. It's changed dramatically. I get people wanting me to go to conventions a lot more. When they put it on Disney Plus, that jumped a lot as well. And shortly after that, I was able to attend my first Star Wars celebration, not the one in London, but in Anaheim. I was
I saw you there.
So.
Yeah.
And that was great. It was an honor, pleasure to meet everybody.
Yeah, and like you say, the fact that everything is now available on Disney Plus, including the Caravan of Courage, it's really made it sort of like, oh, I'm definitely part of this, because there was a disconnect, I think, for some people.
Well, it was kind of out of print.
Yeah,
it was hard to get.
That's right.
It was selling on eBay for 80 or 90, US dollars for a DVD. That's way too much money. So there was a disconnect.
Yeah.
A lot of people forgot about it. And
Yeah.
it's just great that it's come back full circle.
And it's a cute watch, isn't it? It's I think from a nostalgic point of view now, you watch it and we can see the stop motion effects for the different bits and bobs, but of course
Phil Tippett stuff.
Yeah, the Phil Tippett stuff. Yeah, and it's got that sort of real 80s feel about it. But obviously your character, very much the Luke Skywalker of that film. Very much.
Yeah.
And I can remember back in the day, because I'm of a certain age, when the Return of the Jedi comics came out in the UK.
Right.
One week, the cover was yourself.
Right.
And Sindel.
Right.
And it's like, what's Luke Skywalker doing with this little girl? It's like, and then we looked again. It's like, whoa, because you did have a striking resemblance.
I did,
Yeah.
and actually, funny, when we were on the set for the first week, people kept yelling "Mark," and then I would turn around and wait, no, you're way younger. You're not Mark. So.
Yeah, but there's definitely. I mean, looking at the picture from the actual film.
Yes.
At a glance, you would go, that's Luke Skywalker.
And that particular shot, that scene was actually directed by George Lucas, that particular, where this shot is.
Tell us more about that. I've heard about this before,
Well, he didn't want everybody to know that he was directing at that time. And for years, I would say, oh, George Lucas directed me. And then they would go ask Lucasfilm, and they said, no, he didn't direct. So it made me look like I was a liar.
Yeah.
But now they don't care. It's even spoken about in some books, like there's a new book out that has, in fact, there's a shot actually in the book of myself with George Lucas directing me, actually.
There.
So and it shows how he was so involved in Caravan of Courage that the director John Cordy had a prior commitment, so he couldn't direct the retakes or reshoots.
Yeah.
And so George directed me for 1 week.
Wow.
And it was great to do it. In fact, the first day on the call sheet it said director George Lucas. The second day it didn't. It went back to John Cordy. But I kept that call sheet. I think the production assistant probably got in trouble.
Wow.
Like, wait a minute, don't tell everybody I'm directing, but I have that call sheet. So
did that feel special even back then?
It did, of course. I was a big Star Wars fan. I mean, I saw Return of the Jedi 15 or 20 times the year before, so I knew how big Star Wars was. In fact, while we were making it, I remember one of the publicists at Lucasfilm, lady, I don't remember her name now because it was 39 years ago, Eric, you're going to be famous for 10 years. I go, no way.
It's a lot longer than that.
Yeah, here we are 39 years later. So they didn't even know that it would become something like this. And it's just an honor. What is the biggest honor for me is when I see families together and I see a dad and their son and daughter all dress up. Yeah. And that to me is special.
Yeah.
That they're able to
a multi-generational thing, isn't it? Now?
Yes,
And my son collects the autographs, so
great. And I know there's a lot of disconnect. You talk about disconnect, and some fans don't like the prequels. I love the prequels.
Yeah.
My nephew's favorite movie is Attack of the Clones, but that was his Star Wars.
That's right.
Now the new generation has The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett and this stuff coming out now.
It's always cyclical. We touched on this yesterday, but I always took it as a tip of the hat.
Yes.
Is that suddenly in the prequels you get Mace Windu.
Right.
There is no way that wasn't not it was a coincidence.
It was.
Clearly they went.
Yes.
We're going to do this for the fans.
Of course I did. And someone tried to say, no, he always had this written, but we know George Lucas didn't have all this written. And some people that have the original stuff, the original Journal of the Wills, will tell you it's not in there.
No.
Right.
So,
so that was a nice.
It was a nice nod to that.
So, have you got a particularly favourite scene from the film?
From Caravan of Courage?
Yeah.
Favorite scene? That is a very, very good question. I think my favorite scene is when Mace runs down and he takes Chukatrak's axe and he throws it at the Gorax and kills him, and then he swings across, and it's. I thought originally they were going to shoot it differently, and then it's just a great shot. So that whole sequence is great.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
Great news for older fans, maybe not so much good news for younger fans. The Atari 2600, the first real mega console that came onto the market. 46 years after it first arrived, it's back. Atari releasing a slightly smaller version of this classic console, and the old cartridges are compatible. I'm excited because I've still got my Atari 2600 original boxed upstairs in the collection.
Nice.
Oh, yeah. And managed over the years to get all the Star Wars carts. I've got Raiders, I've got E.T., I've got other carts. So I've got games to play. And as a really, really, really crap gamer, it is totally my level. I will be getting this. What are your thoughts on this? It's a different era of gaming to what you were raised with. So what did you think when you saw that this was becoming available?
I thought it was really cool. I think my dad, and there was no point really asking my dad because I don't think he'll remember, but I'm pretty sure my dad had a ColecoVision or something similar to that, which he kind of plugged in and we kind of played, every now and again, but not like often. And my first console was like the Amiga 500 and the NES, the Nintendo Entertainment System. Yeah. They came about, for me anyway, about the same time. So I kind of missed the Atari 2600. However, I have brought over the years a couple of the cartridges for Star Wars. Do you know what? I'm quite tempted. I've got the SNES Mini, which I do plug in every now and again, and it's so fun because it's so easy to just just connect it up via an HDMI cable, and you've got a little mini SNES controller, and you can kind of download other ROMs onto it, so you can play it. And just recently over the summer and the beginning of the year, I was mainlining GoldenEye, which was re-released on to the Xbox and onto the Nintendo. Yeah, the N64 one. They basically re-released it. Like they'd done like HD kind of graphics on one version, and I think on the Xbox it looked pretty much how it did originally. But it was great. I'll be honest, I've hardly touched Jedi Survivor. Bought a PS5 specifically to play it, but I'm more excited to be playing these kind of games. Partly because you can pick it up and put it down really easily. And the problem I find with a lot of the modern games is that you need to kind of be able to commit and get the time to sit down and play X amount of hours a day. I mean, some stuff you can kind of get away with. Like if you wanted to do a quick PvP of Call of Duty, you can kind of get away with that. But even those aren't particularly short. So going back to this, I think it's fantastic. And I really like how they've allowed you to be able to use your original cartridges for those who have got. And I wonder, it'd be interesting just to kind of keep an eye on the prices of original cartridges on the eBay market, whether or not they're going to go up or whether or not, this will kind of maybe keep them down a little bit.
The cartridges, like you say, you see them at events all the time here in the UK and over in the States, boxes and bins full of them. And I'm sure the traders that have them must have thought they're never going to sell. And now this comes out and all of a sudden, anybody who played games back in the day, we've got a few. I've still got Centipede, I think, upstairs. A few of the obvious Space Invaders, Pac-Man sort of stuff. But I never bought Frogger. Played it, but never bought it. So now I'm like, maybe if I find a copy of Frogger somewhere, I can have a blast at Frogger, which was platform gaming and the most basic platform gaming. But like you say, I was lucky enough to get the Arcade 1-Up Trilogy Arcade, the re-release, the smaller cab re-release of that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Star Wars Empire and Jedi, mainly to play Star Wars, but actually, weirdly, I've ended up playing Jedi more than any of them because it's so difficult. And when you make progress, it feels really good. Now, with all the controls and commands and 10 buttons on a pad, I can't be doing with that. I just want to point and click and fire and shoot something or race something and dive down a canyon or whatever it may be. So this is totally my level. I was so stoked when I saw that they'd done this.
It would be amazing if we could get all the Star Wars games on one console and just be able to click on whichever one you want to play, be it, an Atari version of Star Wars or Super Star Wars or Rebel Assault or, and Dark Forces, that's being re-released, isn't it?
That's right.
There's definitely an appetite, I think, for gaming nostalgia, and which makes perfect sense because really that's what we're kind of seeing and we've seen in movies as people of your age, my age, have kind of got older and have got a bit more disposable income. They're bringing stuff back, and just look at how vintage Star Wars is still as popular as it. In fact, it's more popular, and the prices are so much higher than they've ever been. Just because there's so many people who want that, who want to relive the childhood they had, or maybe the childhood that they didn't have, but now is accessible to them because they've got that means. So hopefully it will continue, and as long as they can put out all the games and there's no issues with rights and stuff like that, then I think we could kind of see a renaissance for that golden era of early console gaming, which is kind of really cool. So yeah, I'm going to definitely be down for buying one of these when this all lands over here.
There was a really cool article on Lucasfilm.com this week, which, by the way, Lucasfilm.com has become as essential a site to visit as StarWars.com.
Yes.
Some of the articles are fantastic on there, so hats off to the team over there. But they have released an article that basically looks back at some of the classic LucasArts and Lucasfilm games releases from the 80s that are still available in newer formats, that are still out there. I just wondered, just to what you've just said, certain games are only available on certain consoles. Remember, Obi-Wan was only available on the Xbox. And so would there be the potential? Would there be the enthusiasm? I just love the thought that you've just put out there that, can you imagine a mega box? Lucasfilm as a company in the past have been at the cutting edge of a lot of innovation, and this is fantasy, it's not going to happen, but let's just imagine that somebody somewhere at LucasArts or Lucasfilm or wherever said, let's go right back to Empire Strikes Back and the Atari, let's put everything into a box, because as you say, a lot of those classic games are not data heavy. I think it would sell like crazy, but then I assume that anything Star Wars is going to sell like crazy. Do you think there'd be an appetite for that? It just feels like, what a great idea.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I think this is the problem, though, isn't it? It's rights and stuff like that, and you've got Nintendo and Microsoft and Sony, and definitely some of those companies won't work with each other, which is a shame. You know, I had to basically borrow an Xbox from one of Karen's boys, one of his older ones, and sell my own Microsoft account just to play one game, because it's kind of on demand. So as soon as you kind of let the membership lapse, you don't even have access to a game, which is a bit like with Disney Plus. So it's a bit frustrating in some respects, because obviously we're from the era of you buy the game. I brought a physical copy of Jedi Survivor. I plopped the disc in, expecting it to take a little while to kind of copy the files over. Copied the files over in no time, and then spent most of a day downloading the game. I'm like, well, if I knew it's going to do that, I would have just brought the download and just let it download first thing in the morning, rather than wait till 12 o'clock in, midday when the postie arrives with my disc.
Yeah.
But never say never, I guess. It could happen. And maybe if there's listeners out there who've got all these ROMs and emulators, drop us a line, because, maybe we could set something up, and so at least me and Mark can relive our youth a little bit.
I'm stoked the 2600 is back. It's completely my level. I'll still be rubbish.
This is Steve Bloom, voice of Zebralios, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks. Caravast. May the force be with you.
The day we thought would never come is coming. 28th of August saw the pre-order day arrive for seasons 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian on HD, 4K Ultra HD and Blu-ray, ahead of their release on the 12th of December. Physical releases for Star Wars did not seem like it was a thing that was going to happen. What do you make of this, Mark? Good news? Indifferent? I'm personally stoked that I can actually own The Mandalorian physically, because it's mine and nobody can take it away from me. But what do you think?
Very, very surprised, because I believe the 4K Blu-ray box set that I had was, they didn't say it, like they didn't make a big public thing, but they did quietly say this is the last time there's going to be anything physically released, that was out the same time as Rise of Skywalker. They had kind of said physical releases were going to end. So it's great that we've got that. Whether or not, and this is a question, is whether or not I can actually be asked to put in a disc if I can just go on to Disney Plus. I mean, admittedly, these Steelbook sets are obviously kind of more collectible. They've got much nicer finish, and the packaging's great. From what I understand, they're using a higher capacity Blu-ray disc, which means that you can have a lower compression on the image. So therefore, the data rate can be increased, so you get slightly better quality, which will mean arguably it would be better than the version you'd get on Disney Plus. But obviously, then you've got to weigh up the convenience of just pressing a couple of buttons on your remote to get into Disney Plus versus getting up from the sofa, walking over, picking it up, loading up your Blu-ray player or your PS5, and then obviously waiting for that to load and play to watch an episode that you can just quite easily stream. However, it also makes a little bit of sense, because you wonder how often are these shows being watched for the first time, and maybe they're thinking, well, this is just a way to just get a little bit more extra profit out of these series that have been out for quite a long time. Probably most people have seen it. Obviously, there's always going to be, the occasional new subscriber who's never seen The Mandalorian and just puts it on. But you think there's going to be, a market for physical media. There always has been, and I think there always will. And it's a collector's thing rather than necessarily for the average punter. I'm a little bit bummed out at the moment that the pre-orders are only for the US and Canada, or at least Best Buy. And you'd think it's going to be Zavi rather than Amazon, because they tend to do a lot more steelbooks. I hope this is just a start, and that we will get everything else that we haven't been able to get physically.
I would imagine if they're releasing Mando Seasons 1 and 2, which were the first two things to come out anyway, that Book of Boba and or Obi-Wan and all the other things follow Light and Magic, and there's options to get these things. Because with, for example, Light and Magic, they released the soundtrack on vinyl. There's certain things that they've released that are quite neat and well released. Mondo do those great vinyl releases.
That's right, yeah.
I'd love to think, and even I put it in the article, and I'm sure people thought I was joking, but I did mention Willow Season 1, which is no longer available on Disney Plus. They put that on 4K Ultra or Blu-ray, then you would imagine, okay, it's not going to go to number one in the charts, but you would like to think it would make a decent amount of money. There's people who saw it and did enjoy it, and there's people who are completists, Lucasfilm collectors, so there's certainly a market for it there. If you do that in concert with the movie, then you've made something else quite special available. But I'm personally really excited. I don't tend to get steelbooks, but I'm not averse to getting a steelbook version of Mandalorian Season 1 and 2. And as you say, I do hope that it is a company like Savvy that brings it to the UK and beyond, not just the States. There's no reason for it just to be the States, North America and Canada.
No.
So you'd like to think that everybody gets a pitch at getting this, even if it is in limited numbers, which it doesn't say it's in limited numbers. It should be available for everyone. You mentioned it in terms of gaming, in that you ordered Jedi Survivor and then wished you'd just got the download. But was there, or is there, part of you that thinks, well, I now own this. This is mine now. I've got it physically. It was a pain to do what you had to do downloading for all those hours, but nevertheless, you can always do that. It's your game.
Yeah, I mean, that is the thing, isn't it? You know, maybe this may end up hurting Disney Plus subscriptions further on if we get everything. But then again, I think they're savvy. I don't think they will do what they've done with theatrical releases, whereby they've really condensed the amount of time it's in the theatres and then it's straight onto a streaming service. If they're going to put these out, they will put these out a good couple of years after they've been released, and it will be more of a collector's thing. You also think for those completers who really like, such as yourself, Indiana Jones, that is another way for them to really help to kind of just claw back a little bit extra revenue that obviously isn't available to them if they just put it straight to Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Because it kind of gets swamped in the subscribers. I mean, and I don't know how that works. Do the production companies and the studios get a lump sum for it to be on a certain period of time, or do they get a percentage based on a monthly subscription? So Brian will probably have a much better idea because he's the fan for money guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, whereas at least you kind of go, right, here's a physical release, and you'd imagine the bulk of it will go straight to the production company and the distributor, and therefore Indiana Jones all in with all the marketing was probably about a $600 million budget. Anything that I guess they can do beyond what they can get at the box office to kind of claw that money back is obviously going to be appreciated. You know, they're film studios who aren't exactly, you know, short on a bob or two, let's be fair. It starts to then make it slightly more viable. Movies and these big tentpole movies, the prices have escalated dramatically since the pandemic to make a film like Indiana Jones or Mission Impossible, especially if you want to go down the route of big live action set pieces and not restrict yourself to CG and like volumes and stuff like that. The price has gone up massively and will unfortunately continue to go up, especially with all these kind of strikes carrying on. There is a unfortunate knock-on effect to what happens with these productions when they're kind of in hiatus. So the cost of the productions are kind of increasing even though they're not doing anything. We should always have stuff as an option because there's always a risk, and I don't read, you don't read these small print, we don't know exactly, even when you purchase a movie digitally from Apple or Amazon beyond a subscription, I don't know what happened if they decide to not keep it on the server. Do they give me notice, or does it just disappear? I mean, what happens if Apple go, do you know what, we're not going to store Bond on our servers anymore? Does that mean I've just paid 10 quid to basically have the option of keeping those films for a short period of time? Or, you know, where do I stand? So it's interesting, but at least if I've got them on Blu-ray, like I've got all the Star Wars films, I can always go back, pick up that disc, pop it in a disc drive into something, and as long as they keep on making consoles and Blu-ray players and stuff for us to use, then it's going to be the safest option for the consumer. So if anybody wants to fire in a question, comment, thought or theory, how can they get in touch?
If you want to be a part of the action, visit panthertracks.com and be sure to comment, like and share on our social media feeds at panthertracks. That's across all platforms. Send in your listeners' questions by emailing radio@panthertracks.com. Subscribe, leave a review, preferably a 5-star one, on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher or smart speaker of choice. And as always, thanks to James Temple for composing the Panther Tracks intro, Adam O'Brien for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. Tune in to Good Morning Tatooine. It's live Sunday evenings, 9 o'clock UK, 4 p.m. Eastern and 1 p.m. Pacific on Facebook, YouTube and Twitch. And check out our Panther Tracks Radio Friday night rotation. It's every Friday at 7 o'clock UK time for new episodes of The Phantom from Down Under, Planet Leia, Desert Planet Discs, Start Your Engines, Collecting Tracks, Canon Fodder, and special episodes of Making Tracks. And every Tuesday at 7 o'clock UK time for your weekly episode of Making Tracks. And remember, panthertracks.com, our social media feeds, Panther Tracks TV and Panther Tracks Radio are absolutely free.
Oh, free.
So no Patreon, buy me a coffee, Kickstarter or Indiegogo required to stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news. And that's me done for this episode, Mark, or at least until we do Reaction Chat this week.
Until we do Reaction Chats. So yes, until we do reaction chat. So make sure you do listen to that, but make sure you watch Ahsoka first. You don't want to be kind of being spoiled by me and him ramble about what we thought we saw in Ahsoka when really we actually saw something completely different.
Don't give all that secrets away, man.
But it's good fun. I really enjoy doing reaction chats because it is very off the cuff and kind of spare of a moment. So it's pretty much like making tracks in that respect. We don't do any planning, we just do it. So yes, I'm rambling again. So on that note, everybody, I hope you have a fantastic week in Star Wars, whatever that means to you. Until next time, may the Force be with you.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's another episode of Making Tracks.